Oh boy, we've got Black Friday horror stories. Now before I begin, I just want to say that I haven't been Black Friday shopping in years. Lately I've been doing all that kind of shopping online with Amazon, eBay, even the retail online sites. I do all the shopping there because they just send you the packages and you don't need to be in danger of the chaos that's outside. Though the lines have died down, there are still a lot of crazy people out there on Black Friday. So for anybody who's thinking about going out, be safe, have fun, get some good deals, I'm going to have all my packages come to my front door where it's safe and where I will not end up in a horror story. Okay, I'm done ranting. Let's begin the stories. I used to work at Walmart, and while Black Friday isn't as chaotic as it was a decade ago, it still attracts a certain kind of crazy. This happened a few years ago, and it's the reason I absolutely refuse to work Black Fridays ever again. The shift started like any other. We were busy, sure, but nothing unmanageable. Around noon, I noticed a guy walking around with black contractor bags. He had 2 shopping carts, each piled high with at least 5 bags filled to the brim. Anything with a markdown sticker, he'd grab it and toss it in without hesitation. Electronics, clothes, toys, random gadgets, it didn't matter. At first it was just weird. But then we started getting complaints from customers. One woman said he shoved past her and called her a dumb cow when she tried to grab an air fryer off the shelf. Another said he made some comment about how people like her shouldn't shop here when she walked by with her kids. The kicker, a 5-year-old boy had picked up a discounted Lego set, and this guy leaned down, got right in the kid's face and said, "Put it down, or I'll make you regret it." His dad had to step in, and they came straight to the customer service to report it. My manager pulled me aside and asked me to confront him. Apparently I'm the calm but firm employee, and they thought I'd be able to de-escalate the situation. I wasn't thrilled, but I agreed. I found the guy in the electronics section, throwing discounted DVDs into one of his bags. "Excuse me, sir," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "We've had a few complaints about your behavior. I'm going to have to ask you to tone it down." He looked up at me, dead-eyed, and said, "It's my First Amendment right to say whatever the hell I want. You can't stop me." "Sir, you've been threatening customers." "So what? I'll threaten anyone I damn well please." I tried to stay calm, but it was hard, especially when I thought about that little boy. "That's not acceptable," I said. "If you can't follow the rules, we're going to have to ask you to leave." That set him off. He started shouting about how Walmart was full of sheep and how he was being persecuted. Customers were staring, phones were coming out, and I knew I needed backup. I flagged down one of the off-duty cops we hired for the crowd control. The officer told him he could check out whatever was in his carts, but he had to leave afterward. Surprisingly, he agreed. But the entire time he was at the register, he was live streaming on his phone. He called the cashier a useless idiot, told other customers they were losers, and even pointed the camera at me, saying, "This guy thinks he can boss me around. Look at this clown." And I thought it was over once he paid and started heading for the exit. But my manager pulled me aside and said, "Can you keep an eye on him, just in case he causes trouble in the parking lot?" I stood by the entrance, watching as he loaded his bags into a beat-up SUV. When he was done, he turned around and saw me standing there. That's when things got worse. He walked right up to me, phone still in hand, and said, "Hey buddy, you're live to over 5,000 people right now. Smile for the camera." I didn't say anything. Then, to his audience, he said, "Whoever can find this guy's name and address and pay him a special visit gets one of my Black Friday items for free." I froze. My heart was pounding, but I did not want to give him the satisfaction of reacting. He grinned, turned around, and walked back to his car. By the time I snapped out of it and found the cop, the guy and his car were gone. I spent the rest of the day looking over my shoulder, terrified that one of his viewers might actually track me down. Thankfully, nothing ever came of it, but I never felt so violated. The fact that someone could just do that and get away with it still makes my skin crawl. I told my manager I wouldn't work another Black Friday shift, and I've stuck to that promise. So yeah, retail horror stories, they're not always about fights over TVs or long lines out the door. Sometimes, it's the people that make you question everything. So this all happened back in high school when I worked at Mrs. Fields Cookies in my local mall. It was Black Friday, the busiest day of the year. If you've ever worked retail or food service on Black Friday, you already know the vibes. Pure chaos. My manager had been called to another store in a different city because one of their managers had severely burned themselves trying to melt chocolate for their dip cookies. That left me, a high school kid, and my equally lazy coworker, Jason, in charge of the cookie chaos for the entire day. The wall was packed, like wall-to-wall people, and we were absolutely slammed. People were lining up for cookie cakes, regular cookies, and those ridiculous chocolate dip ones that got the other manager injured in the first place. Jason and I were winging it, making sales and pretending that we had it all under control. By 4 p.m., we racked up over $1,600 in sales. That's when he showed up. A guy, wearing a button-down Mrs. Fields cookie shirt, approached the counter. He looked official, not like a manager, but maybe corporate or some kind of district lead. He told us he was there to do a midday drop for our register, since we'd been so busy. Now, if you've worked retail, you know how midday drops work. Someone comes in, counts the money, logs it into the system, and takes it to the safe or a bank. I didn't think twice about it. He asked to come to the back, and I let him in. Jason and I were clueless teenagers, and honestly, we just wanted someone else to deal with the money. The guy tinkered on the computer for a second, like he was verifying something, and then counted the cash from our register. He neatly stacked it, put it in a deposit bag, and left. I didn't even think it was weird at the time. Jason and I high-fived because, hey, less responsibility for us, right? We went back to slinging cookies and trying not to burn ourselves on the ovens. Fast forward to about an hour before closing. Our manager had finally made it back from the other store. He jumped straight into going through the paperwork and the money from the day. I remember him sitting down at the counter, looking at the numbers, and then back at the empty cash drawer. Where's the $1,600? Jason and I just looked at each other. The guy came, I said. What guy? The guy from corporate. He came to do the midday drop, I explained, now starting to feel a little nervous. My manager's face went pale. What guy from corporate? You know, the one in the Mr. Field shirt, Jason added, as if that clarified everything. My manager immediately called the corporate office. That's when things spiraled. And apparently, no one from corporate or any other location was scheduled to do midday drops that day. The guy we let in, he wasn't anyone. Just some random dude who knew exactly how to scam a couple of clueless teenagers on the busiest shopping day of the year. As it turned out, he had hit over a dozen Mrs. Fields locations that day, stealing upwards of $10,000. He knew the routine, the uniforms, and even had a fake using the computer to make it look legit. He walked away with all of our cash, and no one ever caught him. The fallout, Jason and I were fired on the spot. My manager said it was gross negligence for letting the guy into the back without verifying who he was. Honestly, I couldn't even argue with him. We screwed up. But here's the thing. Before we left, Jason and I compensated ourselves. We took a giant cookie cake from the display case. It wasn't $1,600, but it felt like a small victory. And to this day, I still think about that guy. He was smooth, I'll give him that. But yeah, I'll never live that down. At least I got a free cookie cake out of it. Was it worth it? Maybe. But I'll never work Black Friday again. Three years ago, I worked a Black Friday shift at Best Buy. I'd been there a couple of years, and thought I seen the worst humanity had to offer. People screaming at each other over discounted headphones or pushing past a guy in a wheelchair to grab a TV. But nothing could have prepared me for that day. It was the blackest of Fridays, and I will never forget it. Let me start by saying that I didn't even want to work that day. My grandma had passed away the day before, on Thanksgiving. We weren't super close, but it was still heavy, and the idea of working a 15-hour shift surrounded by chaos sounded unbearable. I begged my manager for the day off, but he said, "We're already short-staffed. We need you." So there I was, running on fumes, grief, and cheap coffee. It did not take long for the insanity to start. Around 4:30 a.m., before we even opened, I was standing near the entrance, watching the growing crowd. That's when I saw it. 2 guys yelling at each other in the parking lot. At first I thought it was just the usual nonsense over cutting in line or something, but then one of them pulled a knife out of his jacket and stabbed the other guy. I swear to God I stood there frozen, like my brain couldn't process what was happening. The victim dropped to the ground, clutching his side, while the guy with the knife just casually got back into his car and drove off like nothing happened. A couple of people ran over to help, and someone called 911. I had to give a witness statement to the cops later, which ate up an hour into my shift. Management didn't even seem fazed. They just shuffled me back to my department as soon as the cops were done, like, "Alright, show's over, back to work." And the rest of the day did not get any better. Around mid-morning, I was stocking shelves in the TV section when I heard a commotion. I turned just in time to see one woman punch another woman square in the face. Turns out the one who threw the punch was pissed because the other woman, who was visibly pregnant, got the last $200 TV. Security broke it up pretty quickly, but I couldn't stop thinking about how she could have gone for the stomach. Thank gosh she didn't, but still, who punches a pregnant lady over a TV? By the afternoon, we were already out of most of the big-ticket items, including the new iPad. That did not stop people from asking about them every 5 minutes, though. One guy in particular was furious when my coworker informed him that the iPads had been sold out hours ago. He started yelling, "You guys should have saved one for me. I've been waiting all year for this." My coworker apologized and explained that it was first come, first serve. That's when the guy grabbed a chair from the Geek Squad counter and threw it at my coworker. The chair missed, thankfully, but it smashed into the wall hard enough to leave a dent. Security had to drag the guy out of the store, kicking and screaming. My coworker took a 10-minute break to calm down, but I didn't get a break at all. I spent the rest of the shift wondering if the guy was going to come back with something worse than a chair. By the time my shift ended around 10 p.m., I was done. Physically, mentally, emotionally, just done. I went home, sat in the shower for 30 minutes, and swore to myself I'd never work Black Fridays again. The crazy part, Best Buy still tried to call me in the following year. I told them hell no, that day should be illegal. I still can't walk into Best Buy without feeling a little sick to my stomach. Black Friday brings out the absolute worst in people. So this just happened and I'm still trying to process everything. I figured sharing it here might help out. My boyfriend and I went Black Friday shopping today. We hit the usual spots: Best Buy, Walmart, and finally Target, which is my personal favorite. By the time we got to Target, we were both exhausted but still riding the adrenaline of snagging some good deals. I had been eyeing the Ninja Cream Deluxe for weeks, and when I saw it on sale, I couldn't resist. It was the last one on the shelf, so I grabbed it immediately and tossed it into our cart. My boyfriend, who's this huge, no-nonsense tradesman, laughed at how excited I was about an ice cream maker of all things. We were making our way through the crowded aisles when this guy appeared out of nowhere. He looked normal enough at first, middle-aged, a little disheveled, but nothing that set off any immediate alarms. He walked right up to us, blocked our cart, and said, "Do you know why they call it Black Friday?" My boyfriend and I exchanged a glance, thinking it was some kind of weird attempt at small talk. I laughed awkwardly and said, "No, why?" He grinned And that's when things got off. He leaned in slightly and said, "Because when you die, you only see black." I forced a nervous laugh and half joked, "Well, I hope I don't die today." That's when he pulled out a knife from his jacket pocket. My heart dropped. He wasn't waving it around or anything, but he held it steady enough to make his point. He stared at the Ninja Cream Deluxe in our cart and said, "Give it to me, now, or you'll both be seeing black." And I froze. I did not even know what to do. My brain was trying to process the fact that this guy was threatening us over an appliance. My boyfriend, though, did not hesitate for a second. He's not just big, he's strong, like the kind of strong you get from years of physical labor. Without saying a word, he reached out and slapped the knife clean out of the guy's hand. It clattered to the floor, and before the guy could react, my boyfriend punched him square in the face. The sound was sickening. I'm pretty sure I heard something crack, either his nose or his jaw. The guy dropped like a sack of bricks, completely unconscious, sprawled out on the middle of the aisle. We did not stick around to admire my boyfriend's handiwork. I grabbed his arm, and we booked it to the front of the store. Once we found an employee, we explained what had just happened. Security was called, and they went to check on the guy. Apparently, he was still knocked out cold when they found him. We gave statements to the police when they arrived. They ended up arresting the guy, and one of the officers told us later that my boyfriend's punch had caused some pretty serious damage, possibly even brain trauma. And I felt bad for like a second, but then I remembered the knife and the threats, and yeah, that sympathy vanished real quick. The craziest part, all of this was over a Ninja Creamy Deluxe. I mean, I get wanting a deal, but come on, who does that? The whole ordeal was terrifying in the moment, but looking back, I'm just in awe of my boyfriend. He did not even flinch. He just handled the situation like it was nothing. And if I didn't already love him to bits, this definitely sealed the deal for me. Anyway, moral of the story, Black Friday brings out the absolute worst in people. Also, if you're going to threaten someone over an ice cream maker, maybe don't pick the guy who could probably bench press you. This happened about 7 years ago when I was working as a cashier at Best Buy. It was the day after Black Friday, and if you've ever worked retail, you know the chaos doesn't just stop because the big day is over. The store was packed, and we were all still running on fumes from the day before. My shift was already a mess of returns, impatient customers, and carts stacked with TVs, laptops, and appliances. It was mid-afternoon when I noticed a guy standing near the fridge display by the registers. He wasn't doing anything particularly strange, just hanging out by one of the larger fridges. I assumed he was waiting for someone from the appliance team to help him load it into his truck. Pretty common scenario. About 5 minutes passed, and the guy started pacing. Then, out of nowhere, he starts yelling. I couldn't catch every word over the noise of the store, but I heard enough. He was mad because nobody had come to load his fridge yet. He was cussing up a storm, throwing out every insult in the book about how poorly run the store was. My manager stepped in quickly to calm him down. She explained that all the loaders were busy helping other customers, but he was next in line. You could tell the guy was not happy with that answer. He stood there fuming while my manager walked outside to check on the loader's progress. The next thing I know, this guy grabs a hand truck from the aisle and starts trying to load the fridge himself. Now, this fridge wasn't just your average kitchen appliance. And it was one of those oversized models, the kind you see in a high-end home with a family of 5. And this guy, he was small, maybe 5'6", and barely 140 pounds soaking wet. The moment I saw him trying to lift the fridge onto the hand truck, I knew something bad was about to happen. I tried to yell over to him, "Hey man, let's wait for someone to help." But he ignored me completely. He was determined to move that fridge on his own. Then it happened. I heard a loud crack as the fridge slipped off the hand truck and started tipping toward me. It felt like everything slowed down for a second. I tried to back up, but I was stuck behind my register. Before I could move, the fridge slammed into the counter, smashing the register and pinning me to the floor. The pain was instant and sharp. The weight of the fridge pressed down on me, and I could barely breathe. And I could feel the shattered pieces of the register digging into my back. I was yelling for help, but the guy, he did not even try to help. He did not even panic. He laughed. I'll never forget the sound of his laughter. It wasn't nervous or embarrassed. It was full-on, sadistic laughter. He pointed at me, still pinned under the fridge, and started mocking me. "That's what you get for running such a shitty store," he shouted. Then, as if that wasn't enough, he started throwing random items at me. Gift cards, candy from the impulse racks, and even a roll of receipt paper. I was in shock, both from the pain and the sheer insanity of his behavior. Thankfully, my coworkers weren't too far away. Loss prevention came sprinting over, and within a minute or two, they had the guy restrained and dragged out of the store. My manager and another employee lifted the fridge off of me, and someone called 911. Luckily, I wasn't seriously injured, just some bruises and a minor cut to my arm from the shattered register. I did not even need to go to the hospital. The guy, on the other hand, got banned from the store and, I heard later, faced charges for destruction of property and assault. And to this day, I still can't believe how unhinged that guy was. And every time I see someone struggling with something heavy, I instinctively back up a few feet, just in case. And yeah, I definitely learned to never underestimate how crazy people can get, especially over something as simple as a fridge. Hey, what's up guys? It's Spooky. If you've made it this far, congratulations, you survived. If you did not know, I have an Instagram. Follow me on there so we can connect. And I also have a Patreon. On there, you'll have direct access to me and can see the upcoming videos, polls, and soon-to-be exclusive stories only shared on there. If that's something that interests you, please consider joining. That's all I have for you guys tonight. Stay spooky, and I'll see you in the next video.